The massive Zephyrian war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a plague of metal locusts. 300 ships of various sizes hung in the dark void, their hulls gleaming with the dull shine of battle-tested armor. Admiral Korthaz stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Edge, and smiled with satisfaction. Another primitive world waited for conquest. "Begin the sensor sweep," Korthaz ordered his bridge crew. "I want to know everything about this pathetic little system before we claim it." The scanner officer's tentacles moved quickly over his console. "Sir, detecting one inhabited planet. Third from the star. Basic radio signals, primitive satellite networks. No significant space presence." Korthaz laughed, a sound like grinding metal. The Zephyrians had conquered 17 star systems in the past 50 years. Each victory had been easier than the last. These humans would be no different from all the others who had fallen before the might of the Dominion. "Prepare the subjugation protocol," he commanded. "Standard approach. Destroy their orbital infrastructure first, then demand surrender. If they refuse, we glass their major cities until they comply." 2 billion light-years away, in the great crystalline halls of the Galaxy Council, emergency alarms wailed through the corridors. Council members from dozens of species rushed toward the emergency chamber, their various forms of feet, tentacles, and hover discs creating a chaotic symphony of movement. Vextar of the Altarian Republic reached the chamber first, his blue skin pale with worry. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the Zephyrian fleet spreading through the outer edges of the Sol system. Other council members arrived quickly, filling the circular seating arrangement around the display. "By the ancient stars," whispered Council Member Thaisara, her insectoid eyes reflecting the light from the display. "The Zephyrians are really doing it. They're attacking Earth." "We have to warn them," Vextar said, his voice shaking. "The humans don't understand what's coming." Elder Koznek, the oldest member of the council, remained silent. His ancient reptilian features showed no emotion, but his clawed hands gripped the armrests of his chair tightly. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian command ship," Vextar ordered the communication technician. "Emergency priority." The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Korthaz on the bridge of his flagship. The Zephyrian's scarred face twisted into an expression of annoyance when he saw the council transmission. "What do you want, Council?" Korthaz demanded. "We are conducting military operations." "Admiral, you must retreat immediately," Vextar said, trying to keep his voice calm. "The Sol system is under council protection. The humans are not to be harmed." Korthaz laughed again, louder this time. "Protection from what? These primitives barely have space travel. Their most advanced weapons are chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. They're still fighting wars among themselves on their own planet." "You don't understand," Vextar pleaded. The humans are nothing," Korthaz interrupted. "Another weak species that will bow before the Dominion or be destroyed. Your council has grown soft, protecting every pathetic race in the galaxy. It's time someone showed you what real strength looks like." The transmission cut off abruptly. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. "He has no idea what he's walking into," whispered another council member. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Sarah Chen sat in the command center of the Global Defense Network. Banks of monitors surrounded her, showing feeds from around the planet and throughout the solar system. Red warning lights flashed as the detection systems confirmed what they had been tracking for weeks. "Ma'am, the Zephyrian fleet has entered the outer system," reported Lieutenant Martinez from his console. 300 ships, just as the council predicted. General Chen nodded calmly. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too much war. "Activate Protocol 7. Send the confirmation to all stations." Around the world, similar scenes played out in hidden command centers. In the depths beneath Moscow, General Petrov received the signal and began activation sequences that had been prepared for 30 years. In a bunker under Tokyo, Admiral Tanaka watched as her screens came alive with data streams that most of Earth's population didn't even know existed. In facilities hidden beneath London, Sydney, Cairo, and São Paulo, military commanders who had trained their entire careers for this moment began the most important operation in human history. The signals went out across the planet in milliseconds. To any outside observer, they looked like ordinary internet traffic, television broadcasts, and cell phone communications. But hidden within the normal data flow were commands that reached every military installation, every hidden weapons platform, and every prepared civilian population on Earth. In orbit around Earth, objects that had floated in space for decades began to change. Old satellites that scientists claimed were decommissioned suddenly powered up systems that had been waiting in silent mode. Space debris that astronomers had catalogued as harmless junk shifted slightly in their orbits, revealing concealed weapons ports and sensor arrays. The International Space Station, visible to anyone with a telescope, continued its normal operations. But deep within its structure, compartments that didn't appear on any public blueprint hummed with activity as military personnel activated systems that transformed the peaceful research station into a fortress. On the Moon, mining operations that had been running for 20 years made subtle changes to their routines. Equipment that was supposed to be gathering minerals for scientific research began revealing its true purpose. What looked like simple excavation sites were actually carefully constructed weapon installations that had been hidden in plain sight. Admiral Cortez watched the primitive planet on his main screen as his fleet moved inward through the solar system. The blue and green world looked so peaceful, so helpless. His sensors detected the usual signs of a developing civilization: satellites in orbit, radio communications, signs of industry and agriculture. Nothing that posed any threat to the mighty Zephyrian dominion. "Sir, we're detecting some unusual readings from their moon," reported his scanner officer. Cortez barely glanced at the data. "Mining operations. These primitive species always strip their moons for resources. Ignore it. And sir, there appear to be more artificial objects in orbit than we initially detected." "Space junk," Cortez said dismissively. "Debris from their crude early space programs. They're too primitive to clean up after themselves properly." But the scanner officer frowned at his readings. The objects in Earth's orbit weren't moving like debris should. They maintained precise positions, and some of them were much larger than they had first appeared. Back in the Galaxy Council chamber, Elder Koznek finally spoke. His voice was old and tired, carrying the weight of decades of difficult decisions. "The agreement was made 30 years ago," he said quietly. "When we first made contact with the humans, we offered them a choice. They could reveal themselves to the galaxy and join the Council openly, receiving our protection and guidance like all peaceful species." The other Council members listened intently. Few of them had been present during those early negotiations with humanity. Or, Kozenek continued, "they could remain hidden. We would keep their existence secret from aggressive species like the Zephyrians. And in return, they would serve as a final line of defense for the galaxy." Vextar's blue skin grew even paler. "You mean, the humans chose to remain hidden?" Koznek said. "They wanted time to prepare. 30 years to study our technology, our enemies, and our weaknesses. 30 years to turn their world into something that could protect not just themselves, but all of us." The holographic display showed Admiral Cortez's fleet continuing its advance toward Earth. The Zephyrian ships moved in perfect formation, confident in their superiority, unaware that they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. "May the ancient stars help them," whispered Vextar, though it wasn't clear if he meant the humans or the Zephyrians. The Zephyrian fleet moved through the outer solar system like predators stalking prey. Admiral Cortez stood confidently on his bridge, watching the tactical display as his ships swept past the outer planets. Jupiter's massive form dominated the screen, its great red spot swirling like an ancient eye. "Sir, detecting several small structures near Jupiter's moons," reported the scanner officer. "They appear to be research stations." Cortez barely glanced at the data. "Destroy them. We don't want any witnesses reporting our approach." 3 Zephyrian destroyers broke formation and moved toward the objects floating near Europa and Ganymede. The structures looked crude and simple, like metal boxes welded together by primitive hands. They didn't even attempt to flee or defend themselves. The destroyers opened fire with their energy weapons. The research stations exploded in brilliant flashes of light, sending debris spinning into the void. Cortez watched with satisfaction. Easy targets for easy victories. But in the Galaxy Council chamber, the watching officials saw something different. Each explosion was perfectly timed and controlled. The debris spread in exact patterns that would confuse sensors and hide other objects. What looked like destruction was actually precise demolition carried out by the humans themselves. They're destroying their own installations, Vextar said in amazement. They're maintaining the illusion of being helpless. Elder Kozhnek nodded slowly. The humans understand something most species don't. Sometimes the appearance of weakness is the greatest strength. On Earth, General Chen watched the tactical displays in her underground command center. Red dots representing the Zephyrian fleet moved steadily inward through the solar system. Green dots showed the positions of human assets, most of which appeared on the enemy sensors as harmless debris or civilian installations. Jupiter Station confirms successful detonation, reported Lieutenant Martinez. All personnel evacuated to the hidden facilities 3 hours ago. Good, General Chen said. Continue with the deception protocol. I want them to think we're completely defenseless until they reach Earth orbit. The Zephyrian fleet continued its advance, encountering more civilian installations as they moved inward. A solar research probe near Saturn exploded when fired upon, scattering what looked like scientific equipment, but was actually highly advanced sensor gear. A communications relay between Mars and Earth suffered a similar fate, though not before transmitting massive amounts of data to hidden receivers throughout the system. Admiral Korthaz grew more confident with each easy victory. These humans were even more pathetic than he had expected. Their technology seemed barely capable of basic space operations, and they showed no signs of organized resistance. Sir, we're approaching Mars, the navigation officer reported. Sensors detect a small orbital station and several surface installations. More research facilities, no doubt, Korthaz said dismissively. Destroy them all. These primitives need to learn that resistance is futile. The Martian installations died in explosions of fire and metal, just like all the others. What the Zephyrians didn't see was that each facility had been evacuated hours before their arrival. The humans had been tracking the enemy fleet since it entered the system, using detection methods that Zephyrian technology couldn't recognize. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in caverns that had been secretly excavated over decades, human military personnel watched the destruction of their decoy installations with grim satisfaction. Colonel Rodriguez, commander of the Mars Defense Network, spoke into his communication headset. Earth Command, this is Mars Base. All surface decoys have been successfully destroyed. Zephyrian fleet is maintaining predicted course and speed. They have no idea we're here. General Chen's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. Confirmed Mars Base. Maintain concealment until activation sequence begins. The true scope of human preparation was hidden beneath the surface of every world in the solar system. Mars hosted not just scientific colonies but massive military installations built into the planet's core. The asteroid belt contained not just mining operations, but hidden weapons platforms disguised as processing stations. Even Venus, with its poisonous atmosphere, hosted automated defense systems that no outside observer could detect. As the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, Admiral Korthaz reviewed the intelligence data his ships had gathered. The humans appeared to have achieved basic space travel only recently. Their orbital infrastructure was primitive, consisting mainly of simple satellites and a single space station that looked like it was held together with metal plates and hopes. Pathetic, he muttered, studying the images of human technology. How did such a weak species even achieve spaceflight? Their ships are crude metal cylinders that barely qualify as transportation, let alone weapons. What Korthaz couldn't see was that those crude metal cylinders were actually the outer shells of highly advanced spacecraft. The humans had learned to make their technology look primitive to outside observers, while hiding its true capabilities within seemingly simple designs. The International Space Station, which appeared to be a collection of modules connected by narrow tunnels, actually contained military command facilities that coordinated with every defense installation in the system. The simple satellites in Earth's orbit were sophisticated weapons platforms that could strike targets millions of miles away with pinpoint accuracy. On Earth's surface, the deception continued on a massive scale. Cities appeared normal to orbital observation, with typical patterns of lights, traffic, and industrial activity. But beneath those cities lay vast networks of tunnels and chambers where millions of people had been preparing for this day for 30 years. In Moscow, the metro system had been expanded far beyond what any map showed, creating underground cities that could house and supply entire armies. In New York, the subway tunnels connected to hidden facilities that reached deep into the Earth's crust. Every major city on the planet contained similar networks, all connected by communication systems that looked like ordinary internet traffic to casual observation. The human population itself had changed in ways that weren't visible to orbital scanners. Genetic improvements had enhanced strength, speed, and coordination. Cybernetic implants allowed for instant communication and data sharing between individuals. Neural interfaces connected millions of minds into coordinated networks that could respond to threats faster than any traditional military command structure. But perhaps most importantly, humanity had achieved something that no other species in galactic history had managed: complete global unity in the face of external threat. Every nation, every military force, every civilian population was part of a single, coordinated defense network. There were no competing governments, no divided loyalties, no political conflicts that could be exploited by an invading force. Admiral Korthaz studied the planet below and saw none of this. He saw a blue and green world with primitive cities, basic technology, and what appeared to be the usual signs of a species still struggling with internal conflicts. His intelligence officers reported detecting radio transmissions that suggested ongoing tensions between different human nations. Exactly what he expected from a species that hadn't yet learned to work together. Those radio transmissions were, of course, completely fabricated. The apparent conflicts between human governments were carefully scripted performances designed to reinforce the impression that Earth was divided and vulnerable. Real military communications traveled through quantum networks that no Zephyrian technology could detect or decode. "Begin final approach to Earth orbit," Korthaz commanded. "Prepare the subjugation message. Tell these primitives they have one chance to surrender before we demonstrate the true power of the Dominion." His fleet moved into position around Earth like a steel net, surrounding the planet with overwhelming firepower. 300 warships took their positions, weapons powered and ready to reduce human civilization to ash at their commander's word. In the Galaxy Council chamber, the watching officials held their breath. The moment of truth was approaching. For 30 years they had wondered if their agreement with humanity had been wise. Now they would learn whether their faith in human potential had been justified or if they had doomed a promising species to extinction. Elder Kozhnek watched the display with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "The trap is set," he said quietly. "Now we discover what humans are truly capable of when their backs are against the wall." The Zephyrian fleet hung in Earth's orbit like a sword over the planet's throat, unaware that they were no longer the predators in this scenario. They had become the prey, and the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy were about to reveal themselves. Admiral Korthaz positioned his fleet in a perfect attack formation around Earth. 300 warships spread across space like a deadly net, their weapons trained on the helpless planet below. The blue and green world spun slowly beneath them, unaware of the destruction that awaited. "Open communication channels to the planet's surface," Korthaz commanded. "It's time to deliver our terms." The transmission reached every radio, television, and communication device on Earth simultaneously. Korthaz's scarred face appeared on screens around the world as he delivered his ultimatum in the universal trade language that all spacefaring species understood. "Primitive humans of Earth," his metallic voice echoed across the planet. "I am Admiral Korthaz of the Zephyrian Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." In the underground command center in Colorado, General Chen watched the transmission with cold eyes. Around her, dozens of officers monitored displays showing the positions of every Zephyrian ship, every hidden human asset, and every prepared defensive system. "Signal from the Global Council," Lieutenant Martinez reported. "All defense networks report ready. Every installation is in position and awaiting orders." General Chen nodded slowly. "Send the activation code. Operation Homecoming begins now." The signal went out across the solar system in microseconds, traveling through quantum communication networks that operated faster than light itself. On Earth, on Mars, in the asteroid belt, around Jupiter's moons, and in the depths of space, human installations that had waited decades for this moment suddenly came alive. The first sign that something was wrong came from Korthaz's own scanner officer. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. Multiple locations are showing massive power spikes." Korthaz frowned at the display. Probably their primitive power plants overloading from fear. These lesser species often panic when faced with superior. His words were cut off as space around the Zephyrian fleet suddenly erupted with activity. Objects that had been floating motionless for years began moving with purpose. Satellites that had appeared dead suddenly blazed with energy as hidden systems activated. Pieces of space debris revealed themselves as sophisticated weapons platforms as camouflaged armor plating fell away. "Sir," the scanner officer shouted, "the space junk is powering up. It's not debris at all." Before Korthaz could respond, the first human weapons opened fire. But these weren't the energy beams or plasma bolts that most galactic civilizations used in space combat. These were kinetic projectiles moving at incredible speeds, launched from railguns that had been hidden throughout Earth's orbital space. The projectiles struck the nearest Zephyrian ships with devastating force. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect laser weapons and plasma bursts, were useless against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The first destroyer to be hit simply vanished in a cloud of expanding debris. "Shields are ineffective," reported the defensive systems officer. "These aren't energy weapons. They're firing solid projectiles." More weapons platforms revealed themselves as the attack intensified. What had looked like old communications satellites extended massive cannon barrels. Decommissioned space stations shed their outer hulls to reveal bristling arrays of missile launchers and railguns. Even the International Space Station transformed before their eyes as hidden weapon ports opened and began firing with mechanical precision. But the real shock came from Earth's moon. The lunar surface, which had shown nothing more threatening than mining operations and research stations, suddenly erupted with weapons fire. Massive railguns rose from concealed positions, their barrels extending from what had appeared to be simple mining shafts. Missile silos opened across the moon's surface like blooming metal flowers, each one launching volleys of projectiles toward the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Korthaz watched in horror as his perfectly positioned fleet found itself under attack from every direction at once. The humans hadn't just prepared orbital defenses, they had turned their entire moon into a fortress. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence showed no military installations, no weapons, no fleet." His tactical officer's voice was shaking with fear. "Sir, the entire solar system is armed. I'm detecting weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt, around Mars, near Jupiter. Everywhere our scouts reported civilian installations." The human weapons fire was devastatingly accurate. Each shot was precisely calculated to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian ship design that the humans had clearly studied for years. They targeted engine sections to cripple mobility, communication arrays to prevent coordination, and life support systems to force quick surrenders. Korthaz realized with growing horror that this wasn't a desperate defense by a primitive species. This was a carefully orchestrated trap that had been decades in the making. Every destroyed research station, every ignored piece of space debris, every overlooked mining operation had been part of an elaborate deception. "Sir, we're receiving targeting data from the planet's surface," his communication officer reported. "Somehow they know the exact position and specifications of every ship in our fleet." The truth was even more disturbing than Korthaz could imagine. For 30 years, human intelligence networks had been studying every aspect of Zephyrian technology, tactics, and ship design. They had analyzed the data from every world the Dominion had conquered, learning from each victory and preparing countermeasures for every known weapon and defensive system. On Earth's surface, the deception ended as cities around the world revealed their true nature. In major population centers, buildings that had looked like ordinary skyscrapers opened to reveal massive missile batteries. Parks and open spaces slid apart to expose railgun installations that had been hidden beneath artificial grass and trees. The humans had done something that no other species had ever attempted. They had turned their entire world into a single coordinated weapons platform. Every city, every military base, every seemingly civilian installation was part of a defensive network that could respond to threats in space with overwhelming firepower. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the coordination. The Zephyrians were used to fighting enemies who struggled to communicate effectively between different ships and units. Human forces showed no such weakness. Every weapon, every ship, every installation fired in perfect harmony, as if controlled by a single mind. The truth was that they were. Decades of neural interface development had created a military network where human commanders could share thoughts and coordinate responses at the speed of electronic signals. Millions of soldiers, pilots, and gunners across the solar system operated as a single organism, responding to threats with inhuman precision. "Sir, we're taking massive casualties," reported the fleet coordinator. 17 ships destroyed, 43 disabled. The enemy fire is too accurate. They're hitting us faster than we can respond. Corthas tried to rally his forces, but the Zephyrian fleet was already in chaos. Ships that had never faced effective resistance before found themselves outmatched and outgunned by an enemy they had completely underestimated. The human weapons were not just effective, they were terrifying in their efficiency. The aliens fired energy weapons that put on spectacular light shows but often missed their targets. Human weapons were invisible until they struck, giving no warning and no chance to evade. "Retreat," Corthas finally commanded. "All ships withdraw to the outer system. We'll regroup and—" His orders were interrupted as the ship's navigator delivered devastating news. "Sir, we can't retreat. There are human ships blocking all exit vectors. They've surrounded us." The scanner display showed the truth of their situation. While the Zephyrians had been focused on approaching Earth, human vessels had quietly moved into position throughout the solar system. Ships that had been hidden among asteroids disguised as mining equipment or concealed within gas giant atmospheres now revealed themselves. The predators had become the prey. The mighty Zephyrian Dominion, conquerors of 17 star systems, found themselves trapped in a solar system that had been turned into the most sophisticated military trap in galactic history. In the Galaxy Council chamber, the watching officials sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the complete reversal of what they had expected to be a massacre. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were systematically destroying one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. "By the ancient stars," whispered Vextar, "what have we unleashed?" Admiral Corthas stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red indicators showed Zephyrian ships being destroyed or disabled throughout the solar system. His mighty fleet, which had conquered entire civilizations, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive just hours earlier. "Sir, the humans are jamming our communications," reported his signals officer. "I can't reach the outer fleet elements." But the humans weren't just jamming Zephyrian communications. They were replacing them with their own signals. Across the fleet, Zephyrian officers heard human voices speaking in perfect Zephyrian military language, giving false orders and spreading confusion. Decades of intelligence gathering had given humanity complete knowledge of enemy protocols and procedures. "This is impossible," Corthas muttered, watching another of his cruisers explode under precise railgun fire. "How did they learn our language? Our tactics? Our ship specifications?" The answer was more disturbing than he could imagine. For 30 years, human intelligence services had been studying every aspect of Zephyrian military operations. They had analyzed battle recordings from conquered worlds, intercepted communications, and even captured small Zephyrian vessels for detailed examination. When the Council had offered humanity the choice between open membership and secret preparation, the humans had chosen knowledge over protection. Captain Sarah Mitchell commanded the human battleship Defiance, hidden for decades in the shadow of Jupiter's moon Europa. As the battle began, she watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction. Every Zephyrian ship position was known, every weapon capability catalogued, every weakness identified. "All batteries fire at will," she commanded. "Target their engine clusters first. I want them crippled, not destroyed. Dead enemies can't provide intelligence." Her crew moved with mechanical precision, their actions coordinated through neural interfaces that allowed them to think and react as one organism. The Defiance and dozens of other human warships emerged from concealment throughout the solar system, revealing technology that made Zephyrian equipment look ancient by comparison. The human ships didn't look impressive to alien eyes. They were angular, practical designs built for function rather than intimidation, but their capabilities were devastating. Powered by fusion reactors that were decades ahead of anything the Zephyrians had developed, they could accelerate and maneuver in ways that defied alien understanding of physics. Most terrifying of all was their coordination. The Zephyrians were used to fighting enemies where individual ships operated independently, with slow communication between units and predictable tactical responses. Human forces showed no such limitations. They moved like a single organism, anticipating each other's actions and responding to threats with impossible speed. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Korthas watched his fleet being hunted with clinical efficiency. Human ships appeared from impossible hiding places, struck with devastating accuracy, then disappeared back into concealment before his forces could respond. It was like fighting ghosts armed with antimatter. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from one of their ships," his communications officer reported. "Put it through," Korthas ordered, desperate for any chance to understand what was happening. The main screen showed a human female in military uniform. Her rank insignia indicated she was some kind of commander, though Korthas didn't recognize the specific markings. She spoke in perfect Zephyrian, her pronunciation flawless. "Admiral Korthas, I am Captain Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force. You are completely surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to galactic warfare conventions." Korthas snarled at the screen. "You think I would surrender to primitives? The Zephyrian Dominion does not yield to inferior species." Captain Mitchell's expression didn't change. "Admiral, you seem to be under a misunderstanding. We are not primitives. We are the apex predators of this galaxy, and you have just made the mistake of entering our territory uninvited." She gestured to something off-screen, and Korthas's display showed him data that made his blood run cold. Detailed schematics of every Zephyrian ship class, complete technical specifications of their weapons and defenses, personal files on every officer in his fleet, and tactical analyses of every battle the Dominion had ever fought. "How?" he whispered. "We've been watching you for 30 years, Admiral. We know everything about your ships, your tactics, your supply lines, and your empire. We know the name of every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, and every crime you've committed in the name of the Dominion." The truth hit Korthas like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been preparing to defend their own world. They had been preparing to hunt down and destroy the entire Zephyrian Empire. Around Earth's orbit, the remnants of his fleet struggled desperately to escape the trap they had flown into, but every exit route was blocked by human ships that seemed to know their intentions before they acted. The hunters had become the hunted, and their prey was far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. Human tactics were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Most species fought honorably, following established rules of engagement and showing mercy to defeated enemies. The humans showed no such constraints. They targeted life support systems to force quick surrenders, used psychological warfare to break enemy morale, and demonstrated a level of tactical brutality that shocked even the war-hardened Zephyrians. "Sir, they're boarding the Vengeance," reported his fleet coordinator. "The crew is surrendering without resistance." Korthas watched in horror as human boarding parties systematically captured his ships. The enemy soldiers moved through Zephyrian vessels like they had detailed blueprints of every corridor and chamber, which, he realized with growing dread, they probably did. But what truly frightened him was the efficiency of the human assault. This wasn't the desperate fighting of a species defending their homeworld. This was the calculated destruction of an empire by predators who had been planning this moment for decades. On captured Zephyrian ships, human intelligence officers began extracting navigation data, communication codes, and strategic information. Within hours of the battle's beginning, they had detailed intelligence on every Zephyrian base, supply depot, and colonial world throughout their empire. "Admiral," Captain Mitchell's voice came through the speakers again. "Your fleet is finished. 60% destroyed, 30% captured, 10% fleeing in panic. But this is just the beginning." "What do you mean?" Korthas demanded. "Your navigation computers have given us the location of every Zephyrian installation in the galaxy. As we speak, human fleets are already moving to eliminate your empire at its source. By this time tomorrow, the Zephyrian Dominion will cease to exist." The scope of human preparation became clear to Korthas in that moment. They hadn't just been building defenses for 30 years. They had been building an invasion force. Ships that had been disguised as mining equipment were actually troop transports. Research stations throughout the solar system were forward supply bases. The humans had turned their entire star system into a launching platform for galactic conquest. "You're monsters," Korthas whispered. Captain Mitchell's expression finally showed emotion, not anger or hatred, but something far more chilling, pity. "No, Admiral. We're humans, and you made the mistake of threatening our home." The transmission ended, leaving Korthas alone with the wreckage of his fleet and the terrible knowledge of what was coming. The Zephyrian Dominion, which had seemed unstoppable just hours earlier, was about to discover what happened when apex predators decided to go hunting. In the Galaxy Council chamber, the watching officials sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the complete annihilation of one of the most feared military forces in known space. What they had expected to be Earth's funeral had become the Zephyrian Dominion's execution. Elder Kojanek watched the displays with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires. "We asked them to become guardians," he said quietly. "I think we may have created something far more dangerous." But as the last Zephyrian ships either surrendered or fled into the darkness of space, one thing became clear to every watching council member. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted forever. Humanity had announced its presence not with diplomacy or negotiation, but with the complete destruction of an empire that had terrorized civilized space for decades. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle for Earth was over within 6 hours. What remained of Admiral Korthaz's once mighty fleet floated in pieces around the blue planet, their hulls torn open by weapons that had struck faster than their shields could respond. The few surviving ships hung motionless in space, their crews surrendering in the face of human military superiority that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. But the humans were just getting started. In the depths of space, far from Earth's orbit, massive human vessels that had been hidden for decades began revealing their true purpose. Ships the size of small cities emerged from the asteroid belt, their hulls bristling with weapons that made the Earth defense systems look like toys in comparison. These were not defensive platforms, these were conquest ships, built for one purpose: the complete elimination of the Zephyrian Dominion. Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as her ship's computers processed the intelligence data extracted from captured Zephyrian vessels. Star charts, military installation locations, supply line routes, and communication codes filled the displays around her. 30 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Ma'am, we have complete navigation data for the Zephyrian Empire," reported her intelligence officer. 217 worlds, 43 major military installations, and 68 supply depots. "All locations confirmed and verified." Captain Mitchell nodded grimly. "Signal the fleet. Operation Retribution begins in 20 minutes. I want simultaneous strikes on every major Zephyrian installation in the galaxy." What the Zephyrians had never understood was that humans didn't fight wars to achieve limited objectives. When humanity went to war, they went to war for keeps. The concept of partial victory or negotiated peace was foreign to a species that had spent millions of years fighting for survival on a world where second place meant extinction. Across the galaxy, human fleets that had been secretly positioned for years suddenly revealed themselves. Near the Zephyrian capital world of Zeph Prime, massive human dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began their assault. The planetary defense systems, designed to repel traditional energy weapons, were useless against the kinetic bombardment that rained down from orbit. On Zeph Prime's surface, Overlord Vashtar, supreme commander of the Zephyrian military, watched in horror as his homeworld's defenses crumbled under human attack. The orbital platforms that had protected the planet for centuries were reduced to scrap metal within minutes. The mighty ground-based weapons that could destroy entire fleets proved helpless against enemies that struck from impossible distances with weapons that traveled faster than light itself. "How many ships?" Vashtar demanded of his tactical officers. "We don't know, sir," came the shaking reply. "Our sensors show at least 50 capital ships, but they're using some kind of stealth technology we've never encountered. There could be hundreds more we can't detect." The truth was even worse than Vashtar imagined. The humans hadn't sent a few fleets to attack selected targets. They had launched the largest military operation in galactic history. Every Zephyrian world was under simultaneous assault by forces that had been studying their defenses for 3 decades. On the remote mining world of Keftor, Zephyrian colonists watched in terror as human ships materialized out of apparently empty space and began systematically destroying every military installation on the planet. But the humans didn't target civilian populations. They struck with surgical precision, eliminating only military threats while leaving non-combatants untouched. The same pattern repeated throughout the Dominion. Human forces appeared without warning, struck with devastating efficiency, and then moved on to the next target. They showed no interest in conquest or occupation. Their goal was the complete military destruction of an empire that had threatened their homeworld. Admiral Korthaz, now a prisoner aboard a human vessel, watched the destruction of his empire through the porthole of his cell. The ship he was on moved through hyperspace faster than any Zephyrian vessel could travel, carrying him toward an unknown fate while his civilization burned around him. A human guard approached his cell, a young woman with the calm expression that seemed characteristic of her species. She spoke in perfect Zephyrian, her accent flawless. "The Admiral will see you now," she said simply. Korthaz was escorted through corridors that were clean, efficient, and somehow more intimidating than the torture chambers he had expected. Everything about the human ship spoke of advanced technology and ruthless efficiency. These weren't the crude metal boxes his intelligence reports had described. These were weapons of war built by a civilization that understood destruction. On a level no other species had achieved, he was brought to a chamber where a human male in military uniform waited. The man was older, with gray hair and scars that spoke of combat experience. His rank insignia identified him as Admiral Chen, though Korthaz didn't understand the human hierarchy well enough to know what that meant. "Sit," Admiral Chen said in Zephyrian, gesturing to a chair. "We need to talk." Korthaz remained standing. "I will not cooperate with primitives." Admiral Chen smiled, an expression that was somehow more terrifying than any Zephyrian battle snarl. "Primitives? Admiral, in the past 12 hours we have destroyed or captured every major military installation in your empire. Your fleet is gone. Your homeworld's defenses are rubble. Your colonies are under our control. What exactly makes you think we're primitive?" The human activated a holographic display that showed the current status of Zephyrian space. Red icons marked destroyed installations, yellow showed captured facilities, and green indicated surrendered colonies. The display was almost entirely red and yellow. "Impossible," Korthaz whispered. "The Dominion has stood for 200 years. We control 17 star systems. We have millions of soldiers." "Had," Admiral Chen corrected. Past tense. As of 37 minutes ago, the last Zephyrian military stronghold surrendered to human forces. Your empire is finished. The scope of the disaster was beyond Korthaz's ability to comprehend. In less than a day, humanity had accomplished what should have taken years of warfare. They had simultaneously attacked every target throughout an empire that spanned dozens of light years, coordinating their strikes with precision that defied understanding. "How?" he asked, sinking into the offered chair. Admiral Chen leaned back, studying the defeated alien with eyes that had seen too much war. "You want to know how we did it? Fine, I'll tell you." He gestured, and the display changed to show Earth as it had appeared to Zephyrian sensors just days earlier. A peaceful blue and green world with primitive technology and scattered orbital installations. For 30 years we've been preparing for this moment. Every piece of space junk you ignored was a weapons platform. Every research station you destroyed was a decoy built to be expendable. Every primitive signal from our planet was carefully crafted to make you underestimate us. The display shifted to show the true scope of human space infrastructure. Massive installations hidden throughout the solar system. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids. Fleet bases concealed within gas giant atmospheres. We didn't just prepare to defend our world, Admiral. We prepared to hunt down and destroy every empire that might threaten us. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We learned your language, your culture, your psychology. We became experts on destroying you specifically. Korthaz stared at the display in growing horror. "You're monsters. No civilized species wages war like this." Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "No, Admiral. We're not monsters. We're humans, and you made the mistake of thinking we were something else." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than any shout. "You want to know what makes us different from every other species in this galaxy? Every other race evolved past warfare when they reached the stars. They developed honor codes, rules of engagement, concepts of mercy and restraint. Do you know why?" Korthaz said nothing, transfixed by the human's cold stare. "Because they never had to fight us. We spent millions of years perfecting the art of killing our own kind. We learned efficiency, ruthlessness, and total war not against aliens but against ourselves. Every weapon we used against you, every tactic we employed, every strategy we implemented, we developed them to use against other humans." The truth hit Korthaz like a physical blow. These weren't primitives who had stumbled into advanced technology. These were apex predators who had turned their own evolutionary advantages into weapons of galactic conquest. Fighting you wasn't warfare, Admiral. It was an extermination. We didn't come to conquer your empire. We came to erase it from existence so completely that no trace of your civilization's military power would ever threaten anyone again. Admiral Chen stood, straightening his uniform. Your people will be relocated to suitable worlds under Galaxy Council supervision. Your soldiers will be retrained for peaceful occupations. Your weapons will be destroyed, your warships scrapped, your military installations dismantled. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at the broken alien commander. The Zephyrian Dominion is finished, Admiral, but your species will survive.